Storms in Nashville today, high of 60.
Hi, this is Joe Bonamassa, and you're listening to Ocean Way Nashville's It's Gonna Be Great podcast.
On episode 4 of the Ocean Way Nashville It's Gonna Be Great podcast, I could not be more excited to have my friend and one of the smartest guys I know, Mr. Joe Bonamassa, on this episode. Joe is a self-made success story in the music business who has defied all the odds and built nothing short of an empire by doing things on his own terms. In this episode, we discuss his career as well as his nonprofit foundation, Keeping the Blues Alive. So, thank you, Joe, for being here. It's an honor to have you on the It's Going to Be Great podcast.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure to always have you here at Ocean Way. So how have you been the last few weeks, months since we've seen each other?
Well, things are slowly starting to get back to normal for us. We have 32 shows. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're right at the precipice of starting a 32-show fall tour, which is great. Nice to get everybody back working. One of the things that's it's painfully clear to me that is the notion that you cannot replace live music with streaming. That was what was proven in the last 15 months. Because the live experience is a different experience. It's symbiotic with the audience. It's not done in two dimensions. It's not done over a screen. It's done in person. And that connection between you and your crowd only exists if the crowd and you are in the same room.
Is in the room with you.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. So during the pandemic, you've probably been one of the busiest people that I would know. You started a podcast.
I did.
You've produced several records at Ocean Way with Josh Smith.
Correct.
You also made a new record of your own.
Two
new records.
We released one and made a new one. Yeah.
And now you're heading back out on the road. Do you ever take a day off?
I'm actually off more than people think. I work very intensely in small doses. Like once, like we did just in the terms of Ocean Way, we did part of Eric Gales' record here. We did Jimmy Hall's record. Before the pandemic, we did Joanna Connor's record, and we did Joanne Shaw Taylor's record, and I think I mentioned Jimmy Hall.
And Reese
Winans, going back a few years. And, one of the things about, I'm a busy person. I don't stay stationary I don't do well stationary. So I during all of this was when people were afraid to fly. I was one of the 6 people on the plane from Los Angeles to Nashville, from Nashville to New York, back to, and it's because I've never been stationary in almost 30 years or haven't been stationary in 30 years. And I don't do well being in one place for a long period of time. And it affects my outlook on things. It affects my mental state. And it also, affects my inspiration to work.
So you're just wired to be moving.
Yeah, I think for now, because this was a test run for retirement, and everybody goes, "Oh, you're never going to retire." I'm like, absolutely. The test run was, can I stop? Can I not do music or tour and stuff like that? The answer is yes, with a but. I'm not ready yet, and no, with an if. It's like if I decide to stop touring, what else would I do? And the answer would be I would still dabble in music. I like producing records, thanks to Reese Winans, who asked me to do my first one, and now I've done 7. And so the other thing is, we've always had this. I've always had this concept in my mind where there is life after the guy in the suit, and I've been thinking about that for the last year and a half.
I think the last year and a half has probably made us all reanalyze every part of our life. You just have to.
Correct.
Yep.
And it's also, too, you've got to reanalyze, like, where you stand. You know, it's like, I mean, I don't know where my audience is going to be in 5 years. I don't know if I'll have an audience in 5 years, and it's okay. It's not something you take personally. It's just, you go, okay, everybody has their time, and everybody has their time, and they have their time and place. And you just, the audience tells you when it's time to hang it up.
So that being said, every artist has their time and place. Before COVID, you were probably putting out more content than most artists.
Probably.
Almost a record and a live record, studio record and a live record almost every year.
Correct.
Sometimes multiple live records.
Yes.
Was that by design?
It was by design because, you know, we do records every 16 to 18 months, but we also recorded a lot of live shows. Like if we would play a special event, if we would do like Radio City Music Hall, or if we did the Greek Theater, or if we did, Carnegie Hall or whatever we were playing, we would record it. We were just having this conversation off the air about, like, if you got a special gig,
Document
it because you never know. It could be terrible, or you could hit it out of the park. So the cycle in which the stuff was released tended to insinuate that all I did was, as soon as I was done with the live show, I would start, working on a studio album. But that really wasn't the case. There's more of a gap between records, at least in my mind, than I think what the public sees.
I think the public may look at it different because there's a studio record and then they see a live record. So there's the perception that there's always something coming out.
Absolutely. And then the stuff we were doing, I had the side projects with Black Country Communion. I had the side project with Rock Candy Funk Party. I did the stuff with Beth Hart. The stuff that I did an instrumental record here at Ocean Way called The Sleep Easies a few years ago. And all of it was really just because, a good psychiatrist or psychologist, or whoever you want to go see, Freud, would say, what are you running from? And a lot of it I would say, pretty much for me would be, I'm running from the guy in the suit, because I don't want to just be that. There's more to life than being a blues rock star. And I just don't want, I didn't want to be typecast, because my interests are so much more vast than that single entity that it's on stage every day. And the problem is, you can only challenge your audience so much, so where if you say, hey, listen, I want to do like this, some instrumental, like jazzy Herbie Hancock stuff at the Ryman, when they're paying, a good ticket price to go see the catalog of songs that we created for the other guy, it allows me to be Joe the musician, not Joe the guy on stage.
Right.
And then that was pretty much by design, and it kept my head clear, and I was better at both things for it.
So currently you're working on a Larry McCray record. Tell me about that, how the whole thing came about.
Well, Larry, we've Josh and I, and the whole blues community, we've all known Larry 30 years.
Right.
Okay, one of the nicest human beings you'll ever meet, most humblest cats, and Larry's been knocked around in the music business. He's one of those ones that has so much talent. He has so much God-given ability, and truly is the last of the Rust Belt blues shouter type singers, like the little Miltons of the world, the B.B. King, primetime era B.B. King, Albert King, Luther Allison, all the ones that we've lost. And then there's Larry McCray, who's sitting up in Bay City, Michigan, and his phone's not ringing. Right. And I'm like, that's tragic. And he's never had someone just go, hey, Larry, let me help you. Because there's always tertiaries and like people trying to make a quick buck off of Larry McCray. And when I started getting involved, I see these people kind of come out of the woodwork, and I'm like, you really want to make a quick buck off of Larry McCray? The man's been dormant, literally, for 30 years. You can't even find, you can't even find his music on iTunes or Spotify. It's like, and so we went up to visit him, and we didn't know what to expect. We had no idea what kind of songs he was writing, if any. But all we knew, that he could still sing and play, and it's still Larry McCray. He does gigs, and few festivals, but he's never been given that star time headlining status that he deserves. And we went up there, we listened to his songs, and we were blown away. He'd been stockpiling songs for years, waiting for someone to call. And they were like, "Hey man, let's record you and document this." And so we're making a long form movie about it, about finding this lost blues singer named Larry McCray. And to me, it's like when people hear him, they're going to go, well, this is extremely good. And where's he been? But he's been literally hiding in plain sight for 20 years, 30 years, since he was on Point Blank, the old Virgin label. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So that kind of transitions into one of the other questions I wanted to ask you about your nonprofit, Keeping the Blues Alive, which you also have a label, Keeping the Blues Alive Records.
Yeah.
Tell me about that organization, why you started it, and what's its purpose other than the obvious purpose of the name.
Well, we started the 501c3 12 years ago. Well, yeah, I lost it. 2020 is kind of it's an asterisk that year. It's like I lose track. It's 2021 now. I still think it's 2020. I don't know why, but maybe because a lot of unfinished business there. But we started Keeping the Blues Alive for the sole purpose of raising money to give away music instruments and helping augment music programs in schools. That was the original goal, because my little school had a decent music program for the size of the school, but there was also teachers that were passionate about it. But the guitars were rotten. They needed money, and it was always the last thing people would think of. And I know there's a lot of great organizations like Music Cares, and there's a lot of people that do the same kind of work. But we were like, hey, listen, we're fortunate, and we started that with the sole purpose of literally just helping kids out with just gear. You're like, hey, listen, we need guitar strings. Okay, we'll buy some guitar strings from Ernie Ball, or wherever they needed. And it wasn't blues specific. It's like, listen, if you guys want to play Metallica tunes on these guitars we just bought you, have at it. We love it.
Just play music.
Just play music. And so that was our foundation. And then we started doing cruises about 6 or 7 years ago of the same name, and it was a good way to raise a lot of money quickly in a 4-day period for the foundation. Because when I got into the foundation world, I thought raising money for kids to play music was a no-brainer. I thought it would just rain $100 bills out of the sky. It's not. We put a lot of our own money, and that was our gift back. So the cruise raises a lot of money really quickly for these programs. And we were humming along, doing 2 cruises a year. It was great. Everybody was having a good time. And this program was very successful. We were raising a good amount of money. And then COVID hit. And I remember sitting in California feeling sorry for myself. And I started to think about it. I'm like, listen, you can't feel sorry for yourself. Look at you. It's like you've done really well in your life and career. Think about all your friends in any genre that I know have good names and are notable in the community, not only in blues, but rock, whatever, that I know for a fact live week to week or month to month. And they got pulled off the road right before the most lucrative time of the season, which would be the summer.
Right.
Festivals. A lot of blues acts make a lot of money in festivals, and they can't, they make less money in the clubs. So I came up with this idea that, it was called Fueling Musicians, ultimately what it ended up being called. But the idea was to give away some cash and a gas card, because I just kind of imagined, I went back 20 years when I was living in New York, the band was in New York, and we would rent this van from Queens. It's called the Barn Rental. It was like a Ford 15-passenger van in a trailer. They were one of the few companies that rent you the van and the trailer. And we would inevitably, our agent at the time would always put us like, first gigs in Tulsa or Dallas or New Orleans, And so we would deadhead from New York City to wherever in the Midwest, Indiana. And it cost a fortune in gas just to get there. And I started thinking about like, well, everybody's eventually going to come back, but they're not. It's going to be hard because they're going to be out of their savings, just scraping by, doing whatever they can, and then God willing, they get it. If they live in Dallas and have their first gigs in Duluth, Minnesota, how are they going to get up there? So I came up with the idea of like $1,000 check and a $500 gas card, which you could take either 3 gas cards or $1,500 cash. And we raised last year over $500,000, and we gave it away to over 230 different groups of all different styles. You didn't have to play blues. You just had to show us, and it wasn't like this huge, litigious government form. It's like, hey, show me your tour dates that you got canceled, and we'll send you a check. And that's what we did. And we did it over 230 different bands and artists and acts. And it's one of the things I'm most proud of, if not the thing I'm most proud of in my life.
Probably bands or artists of all success levels were probably on that list too, I would imagine. Not just unknown artists.
Bands you've heard of.
Yep.
But it's not shocking to me because musician and fiscal responsibility generally don't go together. Right. That's why we are musicians, because we don't want to be fiscally responsible. We don't want to understand how it is to pay bills and live normal lives. People who are musicians tend to be eccentrics and bad at other things, but good at one thing.
Right.
Me included. So, that's the thing. It's like, and it $1,500 isn't going to change anybody's life. It's not like the Mega Millions or Powerball, but it helps.
It's a lifeline to get started.
Yeah. And it was just something we did. We didn't get a lot of media coverage on it. Didn't want it. It's like the only media coverage we really wanted for is just to help us raise money, because every $1,500, there was a 1-to-1 ratio. It's like we raise $1,500, it goes out the door to somebody else. That's it. We're just a conduit. We're a mailing service. FedEx, they were the big winner and all that because we were FedExing stuff. But that was it, and that's what we do now in our foundation. That's what we do now as it's our philanthropic side of things.
And where do you see keeping the blues alive going in the future? Is making records for artists like Larry, is that part of that model moving forward? Yeah,
it's the label itself is a natural extension of what we've been doing. Again, Reese Winans got me dragged me kicking and screaming into this production stuff, which I never thought I'd do. I never thought I would enjoy it. I said, I'll do it for you, Reese. And then I said, but I'm going to bring in some ringers. I brought in Josh and brought in Paulie, Sarah. And so if I suck at this thing, then we got real producers here that made records, and I'll just come in and Svengali it, and put it out. But I found out I was decent at it, and I found that I was really enjoyed the process, and being surrounded by real people, here at Ocean Way, there's a gentleman who's a world-class engineer in his own right, Austin Atwood, who is just an absolute gem, and he's worked on all of our projects pretty much at this point. And, and it's just being here has been a real, I was never comfortable in the studio until I started producing. And I found here at Ocean Way a home that I know the layout. It doesn't matter if it's room A, B, or C. It just, every layout of it works for me. And it works, and we select the rooms based on what we're doing. And we've actually had the most success in room B. I think we've made the majority of the records in B, which for tough sounding Chicago blues, to me, it's like that small room. It explodes with the drums, and it has a certain sound.
We love it. Love it. You yourself as an artist have, in my opinion, a very unique business model, where almost all of your business, correct me if I'm wrong, is handled in-house by you and your team.
Correct.
How did that come about? That's obviously by design, but what's the methodology or what's the reasoning for doing that?
Okay. There's a lot of people that think there was some like master plan, hatched at Peter Luger's steakhouse in Brooklyn. Like, okay, we're going to circumvent this whole thing and we're going to, we'll show them. We're like these evil overlords. The reality of it was necessity's mother of invention. Well, nobody would sign me. After my first major label deal, all the other majors obviously passed. Word's out, didn't sell, it's not really bankable. The independents passed. Even Alligator, I love Bruce, he did pass on me, and among a few other notable blues artists, but we won't get into that. And we were just marooned, drifting without a rudder, an oar, or an engine. So we started our own label, which at the time was really the sign of like you really truly are unsignable, and you can only go the independent route. Luckily, we had distribution through my manager's brother, who was at the time CEO of a distribution company in Florida, so we can get the records in stores. Doesn't make people buy them,
right?
Certainly doesn't make record stores buy them. You could. They just put us in the pipeline.
Right.
Yeah, put us in the pipeline, and then. We were then doing pretty well. We were playing some clubs and we were doing some stuff in Europe, but you could see the ceiling. The ceiling was rapidly approaching. Going, this is how you're going to flatline. This is where the music business deems you. This is your slot. This is how many people you're going to play for. This is the type of venue you're going to play, and this is how much money you're going to make. Step and repeat. Over and over and over again, because once they decide to put you in that shelf on the book in the library, it's very hard to get out of there, unless you do something yourself. And by 2005, we'd grown weary of being on this bookshelf, and said, well, we need to take a chance on ourselves. So we decided to do a couple of 4-wall shows in markets that we were doing pretty good.
And for those who don't know what a 4-wall show is, why don't you explain that, Joe?
A 4-wall is basically you're promoting the show yourself. You are the promoter. You are the Live Nation or AEG or,
You're taking all the risk.
You're Don Kirshner, okay?
Yep.
It's like, and I'm like, it's like, can I think of any of the old time Don Law and, whoever. You're the promoter. And most promoters, like that sit there in boardrooms and with big funding, will explain to an artist and the way in terms that what they do is tantamount to splitting an atom, launching rockets, coming up with a COVID-19 vaccine. Like, this is top tier, high IQ stuff. Anybody can rent the Albert Hall. You can rent the Albert Hall. You can throw your high school graduation there. You could rent the Albert Hall for a bar mitzvah. You can rent the Albert Hall for a concert. And the thing about what people don't realize is like all you're doing is betting on yourself.
Right.
Going, hey, I know I sold 400 tickets in this market the last time I came through here. And that's with no promotion and word of mouth and, whatever. What happens if I took some of that money that I'm giving away as a promoter fee and to an agent and to whoever and put that into advertising for the show? Maybe I get more people. And that's exactly what we did. We would we would use the money that we weren't given to an agent and to a promoter and use it as marketing tools. And what we were finding out was the venues were a lot cheaper than advertised on the settlement sheet. Advertising was a lot cheaper. And everything was a lot more honest right off the bat, because promoters inflate costs, they inflate things. They go, well, we did $7,500 worth of advertising. It's like, show me your work. When they show you a strip ad and this ad that advertises you and 30 other bands costs us $7,500. So they're charging back that money to every artist that comes through. That's how they make their money. They make it by inflating costs, and I hesitate to use the word skimming off the top, but it's kind of, if it quacks like a duck. So that's kind of how it is. And that's before they play the splits, and if there's a split, and if it sells out. So we just decided to do the shows that way. And we started with 2 shows. A year later, we did half the shows. A year after that. So it took 2 years. We ended up, we don't do a show with a promoter. I don't have a booking agent. I don't have anything. I'm as unhip as they come. I'm like, hey, weren't you on William Morris? I'm like, yeah, 10 years ago. But we found them to be obsolete in our model, because we were paying them for nothing.
Right.
They didn't book the show. They didn't get anything, but they wanted 10%.
Well, apparently it's obvious to me that the model has paid off and works for you.
It does, and there's a couple of things that have to happen. The artist has to be a willing participant, because if I was a representative or a manager or whatever, went to certain artists, be like, listen, I know you make a big fat paycheck by working for Live Nation, but if we 4-wall, you can make time and a half on that or more. And they'll be like, great. Well, how much do I get up front? And you're like, no. Instead of you getting money up front, you actually have to put out $3 million.
Right.
It's like nobody's going to take that deal.
Right.
It's like, because we scale the whole thing. We put up all the upfront costs. We run the advertising, stuff like that. I mean, for 32 shows we got in the fall, it's probably $2-3 million out in the street before we even play one show. But that's because we finance that stuff with money that we made from doing that. But when you do the shows, it all comes back, and you get your advertising back. So you're betting on yourself.
No risk, no reward.
No risk, no reward.
Yep. So since you got into the music business,
mm-hmm.
When I got into the music business, it was a physical business. Everybody was selling physical product. You go to a store, you buy something. Now everything is transitioned into the digital era of the music business. No one is paying for music. No one is paying for ownership. They're paying for access to listen.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's changed the economy.
Yes.
With the changing of the industry, how has that caused you to affect and shift your business model moving forward?
Well, the whole thing is right now is the money's in catalog, in bulk catalog. It's titles and songs. And, as we sit in here and have this conversation, we're about 25, 30 minutes in this conversation. Somewhere in the world, out of 52 pieces of product that I have out in the ether, on either Keeping the Blues Alive label or J&R Ventures, which is the parent company, which is my label, somebody streamed it. Somebody went on iTunes, streamed it, liked it, disliked it. So the business model for major record companies is they're making fractional pennies millions and millions of times over again. But they don't have Harry Fox. Harry Fox is a royalty collection agency, by the way, for songwriters and mechanicals. And they don't have return reserves. And they don't have to print them. It's just out there. It's actually more profitable by giving it away for fractional pennies. Who suffers? The artist.
Right.
Who suffers? The songwriter. Unless they're a licensing fool and can get TV and radio, TV licenses. And we've been, there's two types of discussions I've had recently. There's been, mostly was on this panel that I was asked to be on. And one person said, listen, the CD's going to come back and the, and vinyl sales are up. I said, not to sound cynical, I said, they give away free samples all the time. Okay. Let's say if I gave away, I don't know, beer at a bar, and my place is packed every night. Somehow I found a way to sell them potato chips or whatever, or a subscription fee. And then all of a sudden I decided to charge for the beer. Do you think anybody would come? No. Once you zero it out, it doesn't go back. That's the red line. And I said, and then another person chimed in and was like, well, when I do festivals and my own shows, there's a huge line for people that want to buy CDs. I go, they want your autograph. they probably don't even own a CD player. They want your autograph. They hang it on the wall. So we the music in the music business have to transition out of that model of selling physical CDs, because it really is, the amount of CD players in this world have gone down exponentially. Cars are not going to have them.
Computers don't have them.
Computers don't have them. Where are you going to play the music? Okay, the vinyl cats, yeah, they're always going to love vinyl. But that represents a very small percentage of a larger percentage. That's a tranche within the music business.
Right.
Going, it's like Jay Leno, who he's a car collector, okay, but he also has a collection of brass and steam powered cars. That's a tranche within car collecting. No, very few people still go, yeah, I'm going to take the steam powered car out in Burbank. Most people, if they collect cars or whatever, have a Mustang or a Chevelle or regular collectible cars. He's got a very special, unique thing. Now, trends come and go. Where I was, there's a run on steam powered cars, but ultimately it's going to grind down where you're just going to find 10% of that audience that likes vinyl is going to always like vinyl, and it's not going to explode into this new format in which we can deliver music.
Right. I think that's actually the percentage. Recorded music revenue, I think 10% of it's physical. So
Correct.
Pretty spot on.
Well, the other thing too is and we talk about this off the air. A lot of times, what's the clientele for studios? It's orchestras. It's scoring for what? Movies, video games.
Right.
And I remember my friends over at Abbey Road they were telling me the video game business is bigger than the movie and music business combined.
Absolutely.
And you're like, okay, that's the delivery vehicle for music. It's when people are playing video games. And it's a lot of my old timey friends get all, righteous and indignant about it. I said, listen, man, trends, it's like, you think it was going to last forever? It always comes and goes. It's like, we're not, it's like, it'll always still be around. It just won't be in the forefront of people's minds. People are going to listen to different kind of stuff. You get aged out. Every format of music, every delivery format, every way of listening, every artist, you get aged out. And whether it happens now or 30 years from now, that's 100% what's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Absolutely.
You can't stop it.
So let me backtrack just real quick, going back to some of your history. Mm-hmm. It's pretty well documented. You were playing guitar at a very early age. Your father or your family had a music store.
Correct.
When did you know that, dang, I'm a good guitar player?
I'm still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for it. I honestly, I always knew I could play guitar, and the 15 months off that I had, I really focused my mind on what I really am. I always noticed that when I play guitar, people would notice me and be like, "Oh, who's that?" And my delivery system has a certain level of fire and brimstone that it kind of cuts through. But you start asking yourself a question like, am I a guitar player? Am I a singer? Am I a songwriter? I do all those things. But it falls under the giant umbrella of what I really am is an entertainer. And an entertainer is someone who gets on the stage, takes control of the room, and uses the other tools in his kit, like the guitar playing and the singing and whatever, to entertain a large group of people. And stripping away my audience for a year and a half, I realized I wasn't very good at any of those other outliers. I'm an entertainer. You give me a mic, you give me a crowd. I can tell, I can go up there and MC a night if I have to and ad-lib it because I'm just good in front of a crowd. And that's really what I am down deep. I'm not I'm a good guitar player, not a great one. I'm a good singer, not a great one. I'm a good writer, not a great one. But you bundle all that and just literally go out there with no shame and no fear, and then you become a good entertainer as well.
Right. So when did you know that you wanted to do entertainment or be a guitar player for a living?
Oh, right off the bat. Like I never had a B plan. I never had a job that I wanted to do. I would like maybe if I would join the FBI or something like that. But as far as I always knew it. Like when I would see my dad play live when I was a kid, or he would sneak me in to see concerts, blues shows, whoever. I just wanted to be around guitars. I wanted to be around guitars, gear, and music, and that was it. And it never ceases to amaze me, being a lifelong musician, that you still enjoy all that stuff. You're like, God, you think you would just get weary of it and tired. And like, oh, seeing one guitar, you've seen them all. You know, it's like you heard one guitar solo. I still get excited when I hear a new guitar player. That's great.
Yep.
I still get excited when somebody puts together a chord progression that's a little clever. You know, and you know, somebody's got a unique guitar rig or something like that. I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. You know, you would think you would just be like lose interest after 40 years, but I haven't. I'm the same kind of enthusiasm for it as I did when I was a kid.
I've always classified myself as a music junkie. Mm-hmm. Music has always been my drug. That's what I always have to constantly hear something. Every week I'm like, what came out this week?
Right.
Let me go find it. Let me go listen to it.
Right.
And I love finding something new.
Correct. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of us that have that.
Well, that's what we're trying to do with that's what we're trying to do with Larry McCray. And Larry McCray is, somebody's going to, a lot of people are going to hear it and go, oh my God, like I just discovered a great new artist. I'm like, yeah, but he's been around for 30 years.
Right.
It's like, hey, listen, better late than never.
Absolutely.
But this is our mission statement. It's like, because you really, at this point with Larry's career, we are starting with a new artist.
Absolutely.
And past his prologue, but we are literally starting from zero. That's exciting to me. I know it's probably not exciting for Larry to hear this, but it's exciting for me because you don't have any baggage. You're going, we have a great artist, great songs, great singer, the whole package and the real deal. And people are going to listen to him and not go, well, it sounds a little different than his early work. Okay, yeah, the hardcore fans that have been with him 30 years, yeah. But the general public, no, they're going to be going, this is a new artist that we got to get involved in.
One other question before we get to a special segment of the podcast. What advice have you been given throughout your career that stuck with you and something that you would pass on to other artists? Oh,
I would say, B.B. King used to say, watch your money, watch the women, and just keep doing what you're doing. And luckily I did all of the above. He would say that a lot, and give back. That was his whole thing. He would give back to the community. And I was like, no problem. What advice would I give to people now, younger people that care what I have to say? I would say this, is it's very, very tempting. And I know it matters more now than it used to be somewhat of a social media savvy influencer. And some people think this is my ticket to the big time. I've yet to see it. I've yet to see actual people show up in mass versus followers. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I haven't seen the connection between going, oh, so-and-so's killing it you're killing the worst thing you can ever say is like, Joe, you're killing it on Instagram. I'm like, well, then I'm spending too much time on Instagram. If I'm spending the amount of time and energy on social media and all this nonsense, then I'm not spending enough time being a musician and living in reality, So I haven't seen, to me, you obviously have to do both, but always concentrate on brick and mortar. Brick and mortar, that's meaning real fans, real gigs. Put the phone down, take the camera off, just play in front of the people that are in the room. It's to me, that would be the best advice I could give anyone is you have to do both. And it's easier to get clicks and likes and dopamine shots in your arm daily with posts and blah, blah, blah. It really, is more difficult but more rewarding if you go out tangentially and build fans brick and mortar.
Absolutely.
So that would be my advice, because I know it's very tempting, and I know there's a lot of people that make good money being influencers and things. My hat's off to the model. I just wouldn't want to build my castle on somebody else's land. And that's pretty much how I would describe it.
So followers do not equate to butts and seats.
They're not the same army that Hannibal used to cross the Alps. Okay. It's like, correct. Followers and ticket sales, I've yet to see it, at least on across the board, work out.
Hey, everybody.
Are you looking for some cool studio swag?
Why, yes, I am.
Well, if you are, then we got you covered. You can get your own Ocean Way Nashville studio merchandise at our web store, www.oceanwaynashville.com/store. Once again, that's www.oceanwaynashville.com/store.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great.
So now we're going to do the It's Gonna Be Great part of the It's Gonna Be Great podcast. So I have 4 simple questions.
Okay.
May or may not be a simple answer.
Okay.
What is the greatest concert you've ever been to and why?
Oh, greatest concert? Tony Bennett. I opened for him at North Sea Jazz when we did our first acoustic tour. That we did a DVD in the Vienna Opera House, and one of the other gigs that we did was North Sea Jazz, and in the theater setting, because they have a big hall in the theater setting, and we opened for Tony Bennett. And I'd not seen Tony Bennett live, but of course it's Tony Bennett. And this was 2012. We had shared backstage, and Tony was concerned about the score of, I think the Yankee game and where his Jamesons was. Okay. Now, at this point, it's 2012, so it's 10 years ago. So he's in his mid-80s, 84, 85. Band comes out, all rented back line, whatever. And not only were the band A++ musicians, it was like dropping a needle on a record. And I sat there enthralled on how easy he made it look. It was just one standard after the next. You could have recorded that show and put out a record, mixed and mastered. It was over. It was like there was no flaw. Perfectly executed. That was the greatest show. That was the greatest, I say, group of musicians I've ever been around. I've seen some great shows, but that to me was like, oh my God, that's incredible.
And was that completely unexpected?
I knew he was going to be great, but I didn't expect it to sound like dropping a needle on a classic record. So, like everything he sang, the timing, his rhetoric, his rapport with the audience, the way the piano player and the drums and everything worked, and incredibly low volume, but incredibly engaging. They had everyone in that audience absolutely riveted from the downbeat to the time he walked off.
That's awesome. What is this might be a hard one. What's the greatest record of all time and why?
Oh my God. Let's see, Rolling Stone does this every once in a while, just because I think the social media team goes, hey, we haven't pissed off everybody enough. Let's I think they just did this with songs.
Let's do a top 10, right?
They reimagined their 100 best song list. So they basically was like, if you were, if anything that we would deem as classic, they just started with the last 10 years in ours. And that's fine. It's and everybody's going, well, where's Elvis? Where's this? I was like, he's gone. He didn't care. He didn't care to begin with. Best album for me, all time, I would absolutely have to say, in my opinion, would be Humble Pie, Rockin' the Fillmore. Best rock record. And it's so incredibly subjective, but if you ask me a year from now, I'll completely contradict myself and be like, well, no, it's Pet Sounds or whatever.
I'm going to make a note to email you in a year from now.
But it just depends. Music is cyclic. You go through these things where like you get into Elvis, or you go down the rabbit hole of songs from Big Pink, like The Band and The Last Waltz,
Right.
A year ago, I probably would have said The Last Waltz, from The Band. I'm like, amazing, especially Life is a Carnival and all that stuff. Classic. But it's so completely subjective within your own mind. It's like you'd be like, oh, no, that's better than that. No, there's no best. There's no better. There's great and there's not so great.
In the same line, who is the greatest artist of all time and why?
Well, like in my business, there's I call it pre and post. There is pre-Elvis, post-Elvis. Okay? There's pre-Sam Cooke, post-Sam Cooke. Pre-Jimi Hendrix, post-Jimi Hendrix. People like that. Game changers. I think the greatest artist of all time would have to be a tie with, oh God, I mean, this is going to be controversial, but you have to go with someone like, you'd have to go with someone like a Frank Sinatra or Sam Cooke, who was tragically killed like right before, change is going to come. I think he only sang it once on the Tonight Show. There's no footage of it. And Jimi Hendrix, because it was when they would, Sinatra, when he was in his prime, was just so incendiary. It was like so unbelievable. Nobody's seen anything like it. Sam Cooke, same thing. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. That kind of voice, and same thing with Hendrix. Hendrix came out and just laid waste to whatever was going on. I mean, when you have Clapton and Pete Townsend and Jeff Beck going, I can't even hang here. I mean, that tells you the magnitude of what he was doing.
Josh and I had the conversation about Change is Going to Come and Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
So y'all share that in common.
Yeah.
Last question. What is the greatest artist that you would like to work with and why?
I never turned down a chance to work with to me, it's like someone I would love to collaborate would be like a Steve Winwood. And I know Steve, and he's going to be on our cruise next year. Jeff Beck, I've never worked with him, but I've gotten a chance to work with a lot of my heroes. Clapton, Paul Rogers, just people like that. John Hyatt, and that was all in the same show. At least Paul Rogers and John Hyatt. But one of the things about collaborations, especially in 2021. You see a lot of this. It's just like, the way I look at it, it's like managers get together and like, well, you have 15 million Instagram followers. I have 750,000. So I'll trade you one guitar and a song if for a post, you know what I mean? And then the collaboration doesn't mean anything.
Right. It's
like a good collaboration and a good working relationship is with two musicians who you drop the fame, you drop what your stature is, and you go, man, I can help move the needle on this song for you, and you're definitely moving the needle on this song for me. That's a good collaboration. It's the notion that their followers are going to follow you and vice versa. It's too I think premeditated to me and contrived. So. That's my 2 cents on that.
Very cool. I love riding with the King, Clapton and B.B. King. I think that's unbelievable.
Speaking of John Hyatt, I mean, what a great song. And that was like, I think that was the last platinum blues record. Like, I think it was the last one that like certified like.
You're probably right. We'll have to research that.
Yeah, I think it was the last of the. It was like it came out in 2000 when people still bought records. Like, oh my God, have you heard "Riding with the King"?
The beginning of the end. Yep.
Yeah, it's like now it's like if you heard this new record, like yeah, here, hold on 1 second, let me just get it. I'll just go to Spotify or Apple Music and and by the way, what happened to all the money that everyone spent collectively on iTunes over the last 10 or 12, 15 years? Thousands and thousands of songs and dollars. They just got wiped out. Now you're just like, oh, okay, well, it's all free.
It's gone.
It's all in the ether.
Well, Joe, I appreciate you being on the podcast. It's the Ocean Way. It's going to be a great podcast. We love having you here at the studio, love having you be a guest on the podcast, and we definitely appreciate it.
I appreciate the studio. It was my favorite place in the world, and thanks for all the hospitality, and thanks for having me,
My pleasure.